Hey Jack, I'm back, and with me another speed art and ranking. This time I am illustrating Jason Todd as Red Hood, and I will be ranking the theatrically released Batman films from worst to first. This speed art was another request from Anthony Stamps, my producer patron, so if you're watching this, Anthony, hello, and thanks again for the support. And just a quick disclaimer, while I included the serial Batman from 1942 and 1949 in my animation on the main channel, I won't be ranking them here because I never watched the whole serial since they're like 4 hours long each, and would probably make me fall asleep and die of boredom. But with that said, let's get right into this, the ranking of the actual theatrically released Bat films. And sitting way down at the bottom at number 12 is Joel Schumacher's Abomination, Batman and Robin. This one isn't a surprise, I'm sure. It's just a flimsy excuse for a Batman movie. It feels like it was ripped from the pages from the 1966 Batman series and shoved into the Tim Burton Batman universe. George Clooney's take on Batman is possibly the worst take on the character, and the villains he goes against are even worse than him somehow. Arnold Schwarzenegger is laughable as Mr. Freeze, struggling to finish his sentences in an audible manner, while Uma Thurman gives what may be her worst performance ever. Also, the increased emphasis on Batgirl and Robin take away from what should be Batman's time to shine, even though he's a horrible Batman, but he's better than those two characters. But I don't want to give too much time to this movie because it's just hot garbage, and there are 11 spots to fill, and I don't want to spend too much time in either one, so let's just move on from here. And coming in at number 11 is the Justice League. What should have been one of the greatest team of films of all time, led by the Bats himself, became a muddled mess in the editing room, switching between comedic to gritty and filled with some of the most generic dialogue and bland action scenes. It really feels like a first draft of a script before you hand it into the studio. They were afraid to keep going in Zack Snyder's direction partway through, and it becomes a clunky mess when Joss Whedon comes in to do the reshoots. I don't know if it would have been better if they kept the Zack Snyder tone throughout, but it would at least have been consistent. Also, the mustache CGI is hilariously atrocious, but it's not all bad. Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa, however you say his name, both are fun to watch, just a little muted compared to their solo ventures, but overall this may be the worst DCEU film in my opinion. Or maybe Suicide Squad, I gotta watch that one again. But overall, this one's probably good to skip if you don't feel like watching it. And coming in at number 10 is the first Joel Schumacher Batman film, Batman Forever. Taking the reins from Tim Burton and making the franchise more family-friendly and toy-centric, it actually has some enjoyable aspects. Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones are a lot of fun to watch, a little over the top, sure, but they make for an interesting pair of villains, and some of the aesthetic from the Tim Burton films carried over, with the city still looking tonally similar and not as super cartoony as it appears 2 years later in Batman and Robin, but it loses the dark charm and whimsy that the previous two films had, and feels like a misfit because of it. But if you want to watch this one to complete the original trilogy, it isn't a completely horrible place to end off. Now, coming in at number 9 is Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. I saw this in theaters, and at the time I actually had a lot of fun with the film, but after sitting on it for more than a day, the cracks from the film really start to show. Batman gets most of the screen time, and Ben Affleck actually does a pretty good job in the role. The opening scene is exciting and connects the universe with Man of Steel and gives us our inciting incident to have our two heroes face off. Unfortunately, after the opening, the rest of it sort of drags on with long, wordy scenes and weird religious allegory. Jesse Eisenberg is particularly bad as Lex Luthor, and every scene he is featured in automatically feels out of place. He felt more like a Heath Ledger Joker ripoff than a businessman that anyone would ever trust, and I've said it before, but a superhero film is only as good as its villain, and unfortunately that's where this film suffers the most, not to mention the way they flimsily set up Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, and Flash. For the second film in the franchise, I just kind of felt bloated and already about to implode. But the director's cut does fix it a little bit, so if you haven't seen it, I'd say start there and don't bother with the theatrical cut, because it's kind of a mess. And coming off of the dark and gritty is the light and funny at number 8 with the original 1966 Batman movie starring Adam West. Now, when people talk about movies being a product of their time, this film is like the mascot for that. Born from the time when comics couldn't really be dark because of some legislation or whatever, this film doesn't really take itself too seriously, but at least knows what it is. Adam West gives a strong performance as both Batman and Bruce Wayne, becoming what many still consider as the definitive Batman, and all the villains are a lot of fun to watch on screen. Sure, the plot is a little nonsensical and silly, but if you're looking to have fun with a couple of friends or just looking to watch something purely for entertainment value, the 1966's Batman the movie is a pretty good place to start. And keeping up with light and funny, at number 7 is the Lego Batman movie. Now this film was a lot of fun, and much like the other theatrically released Lego movies, is a blast to watch. The editing and pacing is on point, and the jokes, even when they don't land, are quick to come, so if you don't like one, another joke is coming around the corner that you may like. Will Arnett does a great job as Batman, reprising his role from the original Lego movie, and Michael Cera is equally as funny as Robin. Now, unlike the live-action films, this one actually benefits from having a lot of villains to play off of, with so many famous actors behind characters with even just a couple of lines. Of course, if you're looking for a more grounded take on the character, Lego Batman is the last place you should look. But if you just want to have fun and look at a visually stunning movie, Lego Batman will certainly scratch that itch. And sliding back into the dark and gritty at number 6 is The Dark Knight Rises, the black sheep of the Nolan trilogy and probably the most disjointed, with a plot that is somewhat near nonsensical and told in a way that makes it feel realistic, making it somewhat jarring to watch. But a lot of the charm from the first two films is found here as well. Christian Bale gives another great performance as Batman, while Michael Caine gives what may be his best performance in the trilogy. Tom Hardy shows that Bane can be an awesome character and really feels like a strong hand-to-hand nemesis of Batman. Unfortunately, it's dragged down a little bit by the Ra's al Ghul twist near the end, but it still serves as a climactic end to the Nolan trilogy. And coming in at number 5 is the film that shaped the superhero genre in the 90s, Tim Burton's Batman. This film has a lot going for it. Knockout performances by Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton, the gothic-inspired look that feels like a comic book come to life, and some smooth direction that creates an exciting pace to the film. And even though it's coming up on, I think, almost 30 years old, it's still very watchable by today's superhero standards. Every scene with the Joker is a classic, and for the 20 years, he would be considered the definitive live-action supervillain with good reason. The most dated part of the film is probably the stiff-looking costume that Michael Keaton wears, a problem that they would finally find a solution to in 2008's The Dark Knight, but the stiffness is at its worst here. But overall, it's a great starting point for the modern superhero film, a torch that Richard Donner's Superman passed to it, and this film would probably later pass to Spider-Man, in my opinion. And coming in just above the first Tim Burton film is the second Tim Burton film, Batman Returns. This one takes everything that made the first film great and doubles down on it. Michael Keaton again returns to the cowl, and instead of Nicholson's Joker, we now get Danny DeVito's Penguin, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, Christopher Walken as Max Schreck. So this is just a stacked cast. Whereas the 1989 Batman was kind of testing the waters for a superhero film by Tim Burton, Batman Returns takes him out of the shallows and just dives him right into the deep end, darkening the tone, but still feels connected to the first film. All in all, Batman Returns is a near perfect sequel to the original Batman that would unfortunately not make as much at the box office, so Warner Brothers, hoping to make more, kind of made the next two films more toy-friendly, much to their detriment in my opinion. Now, the number 3 spot is actually a movie that didn't appear on my Batman Evolution animation because it is already animated, which I usually don't like to cover because they're already drawn and I feel like it may be slightly disrespectful to reanimate an already animated movie in my style, but I may cover some animated characters or partially animated characters in the future. With that said, the number 3 spot goes to Batman Mask of Phantasm, both working as a standalone film and acting as a continuation from the amazing Batman the Animated Series. This film proves that both animation and superheroes can be dark and gritty while still maintaining a light tone for younger people to enjoy. Kevin Conroy voices Batman with his amazing cadence, and Mark Hamill takes on the role of the Joker, and they're basically the dream team when it comes to voicing these two characters. Also, the animation is on point, continuing the Bruce Timm style from the show but with a more polished production value. All in all, while it's a little bit forgotten nowadays, I feel, if you ever see this streaming or see that it's on TV, I would highly suggest checking out Batman Mask of Phantasm. And the number 2 spot is going to have to go to the rebooted origin story, Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan's first take on Batman knocked it out of the park, cutting back and forth between present-day Bruce and child Bruce, telling his origin while setting up the main antagonist in a masterful way. Christian Bale's first time behind the mask may be his best, as he's the main character in this film and truly gets to shine, especially when he's training with Ra's al Ghul. Now, if I had any complaint about this film, it may be that Katie Holmes can't quite hold her own against some of the more heavy hitters on screen like Liam Neeson, Morgan Freeman, and Michael Caine, but the emotional core of the movie is there, and it launched what I consider to be the best series of Batman films to date, so hats off to Nolan on setting the new standard for superhero origin films, a standard that I don't think has been topped even to this day, in my opinion. And I'm sure this is expected, but coming in at number 1 is The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan's sequel to Batman Begins explores larger themes between good and evil, while maintaining everything that was great about the first film. The set pieces are larger and even more cinematic, and Heath Ledger's Joker is the definitive superhero villain, with a role that blows it out of the water. And while it's been imitated by lesser movies, no one has yet come close to pulling off the deranged psychopathic villain as he has. And the music gets taken to another level, and even though it has been ripped off and imitated a whole bunch afterwards as well, Hans Zimmer's score here remains nearly unmatched in my opinion. But what really rises this film to the top is how it perfectly executes the crime drama that is at the core of the plot. Taking inspiration from Michael Mann's Heat and blending it with Nolan's realistic vision of Gotham is the perfect combination. So that is my ranking of the theatrically released Batman films. Let me know what your ranking is down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked the video. I have a new animation coming out on the main channel very soon, or it may already be out, so stay tuned for that over at Adobe Animate. And before I sign off, I'd like to thank all my patrons: Anthony Stamps, Karen Demarche, Dead Meat, Colton Wood, Ethan Roshkem, Zoran Jovic, HB, Alex Holgan, Ross McGintrey, Q, Anthony Denny, Marie Suri, Reese Ward, Jeremiah Lambert, Minka's Baby, Sam, Emmanuel O'Brien, David Warshaw, and Paul Kazak. Sorry if I mispronounced anybody's name there. And until next time, I've been Aaron, and I'll tell you something later.